Welcome back to the award-winning documentary, Middle-Aged Man Goes on Some 9-Day Vision Quest BS to Try to Escape His Problems, featuring graphic nudity, suggestive themes, and offensive language. Today, well, I guess I don't really mean today, but on today's video, I'm going to drive from the mountains of eastern Kentucky to the mountains of Acadia National Park in Maine. Which, if you didn't know, is really far. Before I could leave for this trip though, I had to leave my wife some sweet love notes around the house. I jumped in my Ford F-150 and got on the road. I've been planning this trip for months. Who am I kidding? I planned this caravan of cluster over the course of a couple days. I decided that I was gonna camp every night inside my car because apparently I hate myself. Through Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland, and I was going to make a joke about some football teams, but given the recent circumstances, apparently the Bengals are okay. My first stop on this trip would be the ecological wonderland of northern Ohio. I don't think anybody's ever called it that, but it's amazing that you have to drive this far across Ohio to find something even mildly interesting. I would be stopping at a place called Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I'm just as surprised as you are that there's a national park in Ohio. I did a little research, and apparently this thing is relatively new, pretty recent, like early 2000s. So back when I was bopping to Backstreet Boys, Ohio was getting their first national park. And I know what you guys are wondering, no, it doesn't have anything to do with corn. The place I pulled into for the night was exactly like the Ritz-Carlton, if the Ritz-Carlton had 100% more deer and vaguely smelled like urine. With the exception of a Mustang parked in the corner with a couple who I assumed could only be going over their Sunday school lessons, I had the parking lot mostly to myself. I was super happy with the car camping situation the first night. I had a 5-star dinner consisting of a ham sandwich, chewy Chips Ahoy cookies, and a Mountain Dew. Anyway, I stripped down to my underwear, tried to avoid an indecent exposure charge, and slid into my sleeping bag. That was until the middle of the night when I woke up and I had to pee. And as I staggered out of my sleeping bag into the parking lot, it occurred to me of how bad of a predicament I would be into if I had to do a number 2. Guys, that's called foreshadowing. Having survived my first night without having become a missing persons case, I woke up the next morning as disheveled and disoriented as you would expect for somebody who woke up in the back of their car. I dislodged the crust from my eyes and drove towards Yellowstone. Who am I kidding? Cuyahoga Valley National Park. For this first side quest of my trip, during an empty, vapid scrolling session on Instagram, in between the bikini-clad girls and excessively edited landscape photos, I'd seen photos looking over a portion of I-80 in Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and these were photos that I really wanted to try to recreate. I was able to find that location using the latest in satellite imagery. That sounds a lot fancier than Google Maps, right? When I got there, the sunrise was looking a lot like a Tinder date. There may or may not be any action, and there would definitely be a lot of disappointment. And as I looked over the landscape, the situation was pretty hit or miss the whole time. And much like my time on Tinder, mostly miss. To make matters worse, it had started to rain just a little bit. Turned out though, the sketchy sunrise, coupled with the rain, made for one of my favorite images of the entire trip. So check this out. After I'd finished making a few more underwhelming sunrise photos, I moved on to my second spot on the trip, which was Brandywine Falls. At almost 90 feet tall, this is the tallest waterfall in Ohio. I mean, geez guys, this is the best you got. In kind of an interesting twist of fate, I was able to see a rainbow virtually the whole drive over. It was beautiful, but it was also a reminder of God's promise to never let the Browns win another Super Bowl. It's kind of crazy to me at this point. This is the first time that I've actually seen the park much during the day, and it's shocking how little fall color there was, even at the end of October. The trees had more green than a Shrek bowel movement, but hey, I guess global warming has its perks, right? I don't know what I expected, but I was super happy to find that the hiking trail from the parking lot to the waterfall was a mere 200 feet because I'm out of shape. I completed the arduous trek down to the waterfall, and when I say arduous, I mean maybe the easiest hike that I've ever been on for such a nice waterfall. Admittedly, it was a cool waterfall. When I got down there, I set up my new Peak Design tripod and tried to grab a couple shots. I thought the images turned out like crap here. You know, it sucks to suck and all that. I don't know, the lighting wasn't that great, and really the viewpoint wasn't that great either. You're kind of too close to the waterfall, so it makes for a difficult kind of composition. Maybe I just needed a wider lens. Either way, I was disappointed with what I got there. It's a cool spot, and I guess I just wasn't able to make anything happen here, but hey, I'm not a great photographer either, so your miles may vary. After that, I moved on, stepped inside the visitor center to chat up some little old ladies and to pick up that dope national park swag. I do this thing where I buy the embroidered patches from each national park that I go to, and I aspire one day to have them all sewn on my denim jacket. I know, that's super cute. After that, hopped back in my Eco Chariot of Fire and made my way over to the Ledges Trail. The Ledges Trail was one of the most recommended trails online, but as Ponce de Leon once said, I'm gonna have to check this crap out for myself. I think that it was supposed to be a 2-mile loop with an overlook, and I'm a sucker for a good overlook, so I hit the trail. All in all, it was a pretty nice hike, but there weren't really a ton of profound photographic opportunities here, or maybe I'm just too crappy of a photographer to see them. Either way, here was the proposed overlook. More like underlook. The only thing maybe more disappointing than that overlook though was my lunch when I got back to the car. Here we are again, day 2, and another ham sandwich in tow. This time though, I've spiced it up with some of those twisty honey barbecue Fritos, and let's just say, those slap. I am moving closer to accomplishing one goal on this trip, and that's to check out the carcinogenic qualities of processed meat. So stay tuned. Look for that episode in about 30 years. I only had one more thing to see in this park before it was time to escape to New York, and that was the salvage yard that they bought and turned into a swamp, which is like an ecological transformer. The legend goes that there were tons of homeless beavers that unionized and took the place over by force. Pretty sure that I read that on a plaque. The Park Service actually built this bridge to keep us safe from attack. Now that I think about it, Michael Bay would definitely want to make a movie over that. By this point in the day, the sun was very high and I didn't see any wildlife to speak of in the park. I took a few shots here, nothing really to write home about. This did look like a really nice trail for bicycling. It's really wide, and I saw some folks out on their bikes there, so as I was walking around in my hiking boots, it wasn't nearly as fun for me. But this may be one to skip if you're not on a bike. At this point, I finished my day in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I think it was a pretty cool place to spend a day. You're gonna probably struggle to spend much more time than that there. There aren't a ton of things to do there. It was a good place to spend the night though and kind of hang out. I mean, considering the alternative to this place was the parking lot of a Walmart. Anyway, I got back on the road and it was time to head towards the land of big buildings, floppy pizzas, and Hillary Clinton. I was shook when I crossed over the state line and there weren't just tons and tons of skyscrapers everywhere. In fact, it looked a lot like back home in Kentucky. When I'd planned this trip, I didn't plan out every single detail. Number 1, because I'm lazy, but 2, I didn't really know how long it would take to get through some of these places. Cuyahoga, for instance, I got through rather quick, so that afforded me some extra time. So in that case, it was good that I didn't have a place planned to stay already that night, because it allowed me to get a little further down the line. As I was driving through New York, I kept my eyes peeled for a good spot to post up for the night, which is actually harder than you think. But ultimately, the thing that led to me stopping was I eventually had to take a peek. The stars aligned and I stumbled onto what may be the most perfect camping spot that I've ever seen. It was wonderful. There were showers, internet, and a McDonald's. I'm kidding. It was actually on the side of the road. There was a little fishing pond. There were a couple places for cars to park and a really small pond for people to fish on. And there were no signs posted, no overnight parking. I pulled my car into one of the spots and got out for the night. At this point, there was only one thing left to do. No, not that. I mean, cook dinner. Starting to get a little hungry, and luckily I had brought a steak from home, a nice New York strip, just for such occasion. I spent the next 30 minutes or so cooking, Some of that was the New York strip, but I don't know why. Potatoes, I made fried potatoes with it. I have no idea why fried potatoes take so long to cook in a skillet, but it felt like I was out there forever. This will shock many of you viewers at home to know, but I am absolutely no chef, and I had to constantly fight against my base instinct to just burn everything to death. The keen observer would be asking, how has he managed to keep his food cold on this trip? Funny you should ask that. And no, it doesn't involve magic. I actually bought a cheap cooler off Amazon. I used a solar generator to harvest energy from my Prius into the battery to power the refrigerator. So pretty cool setup. Anyway, this setup kept my food nice and fresh and kept me from eating 700 pounds of McDonald's along the trip, which is another one of my base instincts. Steak turned out fine, 3 out of 5, and the culmination of the quiet, the beauty, and the sheer lack of responsibility, I'm not sure that I've ever been happier. Don't tell my wife. And to top it all off, I had cell signal. I was living like a king. I mean, the kind of king who lives in the back of his Prius, but still a king, no less. And the best part was I got to share it with one of the most important people in my life, myself. The next morning, luckily, I woke up marginally refreshed. I left the little roadside park and headed towards the self-proclaimed America's #1 state park, Letchworth State Park. I'd seen some amazing photography come out of this place, again on my journeys through Instagram, and I couldn't wait to try my hand at it. I'd planned on getting there sunrise, but the weather app on my phone told me there wouldn't actually be a sunrise that morning. As I contemplated the heat death of everything on Earth, I couldn't help but note how beautiful the drive over was. And that was pretty dope, but not nearly as dope as getting to the park before the gates open and not having to pay. So, word to the wise, get there super early, you don't even have to pay at the gate, they just leave them up. Sticking it to the man. When I finally got inside the park, and holy crap, it was something to see. It's kind of that feeling if you've ever been near the Grand Canyon and just kind of how it sneaks up on you. You're driving through the trees, and then bam, 1 minute you're at the Grand Canyon. And while the canyon at Letchworth State Park is not nearly as impressive as the Grand Canyon, it's still really impressive to see and was much more than I bargained for. There was only one problem though, and that was that the water running through the bottom of the canyon looked like explosive diarrhea water. I just want to go ahead and tell you guys now, whatever your expectations are for the photography here, lower them. Lower them a lot. After a little bit of confusion over which trail to go on, I made the trek down to Lower Falls. The trail wasn't super long, which was whatever. Taking a sign that says don't get too close to the falls as merely a suggestion, I got to a small overlook that looks like it's been carved out by other photographers at the base of the falls. I'd looked forward to hiking here for so long, and it was hard to be anything but a little disappointed by my photographic results here. If there is a silver lining though, at least I have something to blame it on other than my lackluster creative eye. I did the walk of shame back to my car, but before I did, I posed for some cute selfies on top of the gorge. My last stop before leaving the park was Upper Falls and the resort and little lodge nearby. Here it looked a lot like a recreation from the Stephen King movie and novel Mist.
It's death.
Something in the mist!
Since I wasn't confident in my ability to take pictures here, given the nature of the water and all that, I took a few video clips before I left. Staying true to form, I finished early. I was only a few hours away from my next destination, which was Watkins Glen State Park. So I shifted my Prius out of eco mode into power mode, barely holding the roughly 37 horsepower on the ground, and arrived in Watkins Glen State Park. As I rolled through the Winston-smoking, Budweiser-swigging NASCAR town center, I resisted the urge to don my rainbow Jeff Gordon jacket. The trail that I'd set my sights on in my research leading up to the trip was called the Gorges Trail. A lot of gorge trails, gorgeous trails, which, did you know, circles the gorge. In Watkins Glen, it's not exactly like you're spoiled for choice. If I'm not mistaken, it's one of the only trails in the park. So if you're going here, do that one. See, that was easy. And I have to say, as I started to wander through the gorge, I was greeted by breathtaking view after breathtaking view. The views in this place were staggering. For as disappointed as I was with Letchworth, Watkins Glen delivered in spades. This is truly the kind of place that you could come back to time after time and get fantastic new images each time. Around every bend in the park, there was a new photo to be taken, and 15 people anxious to step in front of you as you try to take that shot. But that's par for the course, and I mean, we expect that. We go to these nice parks. And unlike Cuyahoga National Park, I was actually finally able to see a little bit of fall color, so that was sweet. As I walked back to my car, I was shouted down by a young lady. Hopefully she stumbles across this video one day. But she was from New Hampshire. She said she didn't know where the parking lot was, and better yet, she told me that I look like an influencer. I told her that my puffer coat had probably tricked her, and the only people that I have much influence over are some folks in the Manchester jail in Clay County, Kentucky. I told her that I wasn't 100% sure where the parking lot was either, but we would either figure it out or starve to death together. I don't think that comforted her, but now with our fates intertwined, it was at least funny that we tagged along together. I'm not sure why she wanted to go with me, but it might have been because my thighs looked like they would have made a nice snack, should we have to resort to cannibalism. That wouldn't be necessary though, because thanks to my Christopher Columbus-esque navigational skills, or the well-marked trail, we made it back to the park. Before I left, she was kind enough to tell me of another waterfall that was nearby. It was called, frig man, these are tough, Togganock Falls. I'm just gonna put it there. Don't leave a comment if I butchered that. I hammered down in the Prius and tried to get there before nightfall.
Next light, turn left.
And let me just tell you, once I got there, if there was anything that was worth doing on this trip, my journey over to Togganock Falls was definitely worth it. A super short trail once I got there, but the shots there, man, they just turned out awesome. This made me think that maybe God doesn't hate me and all the misfortune in my life isn't punishment for all the times that I didn't say my prayers as a child. Things are looking up. Having had one of the most amazing days of my life, I set my task on my new nightly routine of finding a place to lay my weary head. With darkness bearing down on me, I continued on down the line. I finally stopped at a random place called Pixley Falls State Park. I pulled off the busted asphalt into the parking lot. There was nobody there, no lights, no cell service. There was nobody there, no lights, no cell service, and honestly, this was as sketchy of a place as I've been on the whole trip. And I thought if I was gonna get serial killed, this was probably the place for it to happen. Morning came early the next morning, as it tends to do, and I got back on the road. At this point on the trip, I still haven't had a shower. For those keeping score at home, we are on day 3. I'd set myself one goal for that day, and that was to chisel away the cheddar that had accumulated around my bottom and find a shower. This next part of my grand adventure is something that I'm not proud of, but we're gonna talk about me showering at a truck stop. Next thing I knew, I was pulling into a pilot truck stop. I put on my trucker hat, I browsed the chrome accessories, tried to pretend like I was one of them. I nervously wandered around the store until my number was called. And much to my surprise, apparently they've been hiding showers in the back of these pilots and these different truck stops for years. They had 8 nice, reasonably sized bathrooms right in the back of the truck stop. With great hesitation and a pair of sturdy flip-flops, I stepped inside. Again, I was shook. The room was already warm. There was a pile of neat linens, towels, washcloths, everything, soap, everything already there taken care of. And the most beautiful part of it all, there was no time limit and as much hot water as you could stand to be under. I have to say, my expectations for this part of the trip were pretty darn low, but I couldn't have been more pleased with how this turned out. And now, guys, I can confidently say that I'm a Pilot Travel Rewards member. I might just start stopping and showering at these places for fun. You know, this could be the start of something beautiful. Anyway, back on the road, and it was time for me to pass through the only mountain range that I know of named after chairs. You're gonna hear me say this stuff a lot, but this was again one of the most beautiful places that I'd ever been to. With the leaves looking like a box of warm-hued crayons, the timing of this trip could not have been more perfect. Admittedly though, this was by complete accident. When I planned this trip, I'd fully conceded that by the time that I got this far north, that there would be no color left in the trees. But I think the sign back in Cuyahoga Valley National Park, with everything being so green and the leaves changing so late this season, it delayed everything. So the timing was perfect. I was a little nervous, a little apprehensive as I pulled into the town of Lake Placid, New York. I'd seen the movie. It's pretty cool also that the US training facility, the Winter Olympics training facilities are there. Pretty dope, or maybe doping would be more appropriate here. Lake Placid is pretty darn cool because it's actually situated between Whiteface Mountain in the north and then Mount Marcy, which turns out is the highest peak in New York. And when I had originally outlined my trip, I'd planned to climb Mount Marcy. Unfortunately, it was snow-capped and I'm a wimp, so that didn't exactly happen. Because of my lack of planning and being marginally ahead of schedule, I was left with some extra time. After doing extensive research for 5 minutes at a truck stop, I decided that I would check out a place nearby called High Falls Gorge. I was surprised when I pulled into High Falls Gorge that it wasn't like a state park situation. In fact, it was more like a Gatlinburg situation. I walked into the little ticketing booth, gift shop, coffee shop, restaurant, ordeal, paid the nice lady at the counter $20, and then I was on my way.
I don't want you guys to get the wrong impression. I like this place. It's really pretty. But there's something of an air of artificiality about it, to be completely honest with you. Everything here just feels a little too perfect. The walkways are too nice. Everything's man-made, like not even a pretense of trying to keep the natural environment intact. It's all scaffolding and wood. In addition to the gorge proper, the park also offers a nature trail that's supposed to be 1 mile. That's what I'm on now, so I'm gonna check that out. Early returns are, look at the color. Wow. It's popping in here.
All in all, this place was a pretty nice stop. It's like Pigeon Forge's idea of what a state park or a national park should be. Overcrowded, everything felt a little bit artificial. There were some trails, but they were a little bit overdone and they're zigzagging everywhere with like catwalks and stuff. A little disappointed they didn't have putt-putt. The main feature of this park though was the waterfall, and I thought that was fine. But hey, you know, kudos to the place. It's a really nice, well-maintained place. The bathrooms were nice and warm. Now, all in all, it was an all right stop. I just wouldn't go there expecting to spend just a ton of time. It's like 3 hours max. After some cliche reflections in my car, it was time to get back on the road. This time I was driving around the coast of Lake Champlain and we'd be crossing the bridge over into Vermont. As I went through, I stopped for an iced coffee at McDonald's, and then I drove straight across the state into New Hampshire. Again, it was time for the fun game of try to find a nice place to stay for the night, and this was one of my trickiest outings. All the parking lots and all the public parking areas were blocked off, and they actually had signs on a lot of them, no overnight parking. And sometimes they had gates and chains and whatnot, so it proved to be quite the challenge finding a place to stop for the night. Luckily, I found a little wayside to pull off of, again, no cell service, and then started preparing my dinner. Tonight, it would be tender, juicy prime rib, some nice buttery garlic mashed potatoes, and then I turned in for the night. Because it was dark when I pulled in, I didn't really get to see anything. I couldn't see any of my surroundings, so the next morning was just wow. The final push through rural New Hampshire and into Maine was fantastic. And then at last, I made it into Acadia National Park. Inexplicably named after a spacious yet economical GMC SUV, this was the East Coast crown jewel of National Park. And once inside, I didn't waste any time. I went straight to the visitor center, got my map, bought my ticket, and went straight into Isaac Abner REI mode. The trail that the trail guide suggested, who am I kidding? The trail that Google Maps suggested that I take was what was called the Beehive Trail. After getting interrupted a bunch, I went ahead and got started. This trail isn't very long, but it's almost completely uphill to start, which is something.
Seen these blue marks. Guessing that's what you're following here. You can hear me breathing heavily. A lot uphill. Wow.
There are a couple of these iron run, high elevation kind of, I don't know, sort of sketchy trails inside the park. My inner Tony Hawk thrill seeker reared its ugly head, and I decided that I needed to attempt the 900 and try these trails. Unfortunately though, my dad-like physique would make things just a little more challenging.
I literally just bought my park pass and drove straight to this trail. Acadia. You sure know how to make a good first impression. Wow. This place is gorgeous. But this is steep.
The most difficult one of these trails inside the park was the Precipice Trail, and I had decided that I better try the Beehive Trail first before I tried the harder. The trail starts innocently enough, just like that rumble in your stomach after you've had your Taco Bell, and pretty soon you know things are gonna escalate and you're gonna be on your knees snuggling up to a toilet, begging for mercy. My general lack of fitness kept me out of breath, but also the sights were pretty breathtaking too. Every couple of feet that I would climb on the trail, the views seemed like they got better and better. And pretty soon I was at the complete crap your pants part. And the best part about getting really dope shots like this was that I got to do them twice. If it looks like the camera was shaking a little bit, it's because I was freaking more than a little scared. This kind of stuff wouldn't really make me that nervous if I wasn't keenly aware of my overall clumsiness and lack of fitness. The day's hike really had a lot of ups and downs. Like literally, I went up a lot and down a lot. The views from the top were stunning, and after some reflecting, I do think that, except for a couple of spots, this trail was mostly safe for almost anybody to attend. So if you're in the park, don't let that hold you back. There are a few sections where you have to climb, but you're never really in any danger. It was a nice afternoon stroll. All in all, I really enjoyed the Beehive Trail, and I'm happy to report that there were no bees. We can thank global warming for that too, I guess. Again, because I hadn't really planned things out in advance, I wasn't able to stay inside the park. I had to stay at a campground that was actually outside the park and not ran by the Park Service. And that was whatever, it was okay. I ended up staying at a small campground outside of Bar Harbor. The name Bar Harbor is just a little bit of a trick because, spoiler alert, there aren't many bars there. In fact, there wasn't much of anything happening in the town. Just lots and lots of places selling crabs. If you're a crab chilling in the water near Maine, you better run. These guys are after you. For the first time since this shoddily maintained train left the station, I didn't have to drive for a few days, which was nice because all of my friends on Facebook were constantly reminding me of how high the gas prices were. One more thing that I did that night though was I made a little excursion over to Jordan Pond to try to get some photos. The sunset was just okay, but I really liked how some of these shots turned out. The next morning, a miracle happened. No, nobody came back from the dead, but I made it out of the bed to take sunrise photos. There's a lighthouse in Bar Harbor that I wanted to go take pictures of. And honestly, what's more cliche than a lighthouse in Maine, except maybe a middle-aged white guy going and taking a picture of said lighthouse. I got to the lighthouse, and unfortunately there was no really good avenue to get down to the actual viewpoint, right? I wanted to be on the shore with the rocks and all the stuff. So I had to climb over the fence and walk through the brush to try to get down there. Just a few minutes later, and just before all the action started, another photographer breaks the man code and comes up there too. Turned out he was a teacher from Vermont, a really cool dude, and we had a really nice chat there. There weren't really enough clouds to deliver a compelling shot, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys with sky replacement. Being a complete novice at climbing and having all the upper body strength of a T-Rex, I should probably try to tackle the Precipice Trail.
In the words of Rihanna, this is what we came for. We are at the Precipice Trail in Acadia National Park. One of Acadia's steepest and most challenging hiking trails, they say. Well, we'll be the judge of that, so let's hit it. Already. What a way to start.
But as it happened, I summoned my inner Alex Honnold and I began to climb. I've always been a bit of a thrill seeker, so it's not out of my normal personality to try to hike trails like this or do something like this. I saw the exposed sections of this trail on the internet, and frankly, I couldn't resist. Unlike the Beehive Trail that was kind of a slower build up, everything was uphill, but it was a little more gradual. The Precipice Trail had all the subtlety of a ballistic missile. As I put one foot in front of and started to ascend the mile of elevation gain that you cover in 1 mile of trail, I was reminded of just how much Pepsi, pizza, and Twinkies that I had enjoyed over the past year.
Falls on this mountain have resulted in serious injury and death. A quick Google told me that most recent death was in 2012. A college student died. So we're gonna be super careful. Just like yesterday, we're following the blue blazes. So far, a lot of scrambling over rocks. Not been too slippery so far, that's good. Your boy's gonna have to hit the gym when he gets back. while it's kind of leveled out for a second. The weather in Acadia so far has been perfect. This morning, I was a little cool. It's like 55 degrees. You can see I'm wearing a t-shirt. It's a very good decision in retrospect, because I'm sweaty, so sweaty. Looks like we're going through a little cave. Just want to be careful and not turn an ankle or anything. Oh, shoot. Shoot. Just a brief moment to cool off, as you can see. Not super cool just yet, but at least I've got my breath back, so we're gonna head on our way up. So far I've not really got to the truly sketchy parts, so I think the worst is still yet to come.
Although in my skinny jeans I was far and away the most fashionable gentleman on the trail, the jeans were more than just a little restrictive as I tried to climb over the boulders and scramble up the cliffs of the Precipice Trail. It was like one of those training masks that the gym bros wear to increase their performance, except for my legs. And at this point in my life, I don't need the restriction. But hey, at least I looked good. Another benefit of wearing all this denim on these warm-ish October days was the sheer Amazon River of butt crack sweat that I was able to generate as I climbed higher. Step by step, that continued to get worse as well. Yeah, I know, this is the kind of riveting YouTube content that you signed up for.
That's really exposed there. This place is incredible. Alright, we keep going. So I'm just working my way up the Precipice Trail, and it's a lot more intense. The elevation gain is significant. Look at all this. Sweaty. A lot of fun though. And there's the good stuff. Up and there's down. Super narrow. My hands are not shaking too bad in the video. I'm scared. There's everybody down there. Still trucking. It's a big time hike. Hats off to the poor son of a gun who hiked this without the rails. Kudos to you, you're a hero. Check it out. Ooh. Ooh, 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 ooh. One more big section, guys. We're running out of mountain. Kayla would kill me. She would kill me if she knew I did this. I'm not gonna recommend this video for her. YouTube's tell the algorithm don't send it to Kayla.
With over 1,000 feet of elevation gain in a mile, it's trails like this that remind me just how casual of a mountaineer that I am. Like, super casual. I was sweaty and gross and mostly hoped that a polar bear would pop out of the bushes and eat me and put me out of my misery. But finally, at long last, I made it to the top. As the terrain started to level and I summited the mountain, I couldn't help but contemplate some of life's greatest questions. Like, what is the meaning of life? Where do we go when we die? Why do people hate on Applebee's? Riblets slap.
Reached the summit, or at least what looks like the summit at this point. Kind of walking across the top of this craggy granite outcropping.
In all seriousness, this is one of the prettiest hikes that I've ever been on, and I have hiked Angel's Landing in Utah. It ranks pretty highly. The solitude, the sheer physical challenge, the natural beauty, and this is all amplified by the fact that we are at apparently peak fall color. This capped off an amazing hike and was one of the highlights of the trip. That evening and well into the next day, the weather had started to resemble my mood, which is to say bleak. There were a few more trails that I wanted to hit, but I wasn't trying to drive home in wet clothes. So because of the rain, I decided to call it a trip one day early, and I started packing my things and began to head home. Back to the land of Colonel Sanders and all horse everything. What is there to say about this trip? Well, to my wife's complete surprise, I didn't get serial killed even once, despite sleeping in random places every single night. Safe to say it's one of the best trips that I've ever been on. Even with the lack of showers and lack of 5-star accommodations, I managed to have a really good time and see some of the most wonderful sights on the east coast of the United States. I've got a few really nice photos, memories that will last a lifetime, and also a really nice break from my stressful job as a public defender. Only thing left to do now is to drive this whole thing back. I needed to get back home to my camera collection and Kayla or whatever. If you've managed to make it all the way through this abomination, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, but until next time, we'll see you all later.